Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our UCLA Alumni Association Town Hall. I am your UCLA Alumni Association President, D'Artagnan Scorza, and I'm joined today by an incredible panel. We held these town halls really to provide an opportunity for all of you as alums and students and university leadership to connect around issues related to the university, both on and off campus, as well as to learn more about the initiatives that we run here in the Alumni Association. What's incredible about this opportunity is that it gives us the chance to connect and to remain connected to each other, but also to all that UCLA has to offer. Now, tonight, we're going to do something new and special, and I'm proud to welcome Matt Saucedo, who will be co-hosting tonight's town hall with me, and working with our panelists to bring to you, each and every single one of you, a good conversation and great dialogue around issues facing our students today. From the COVID-19 pandemic to remote learning, our students have really made their voices heard as they've called upon UCLA to be responsive to their needs as well as to set them up for a really successful future. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Matt Saucedo, who is going to walk you through tonight's program. But also, remember, we invite you to send your questions in, and we will make sure that the place you can send those questions to is posted in the chat today. So with that being said, Matt, take it away.
Hey everybody, good evening. It's great to see so many great people joining up the Zoom. It's wonderful to see everybody. Super excited for tonight's conversation. We're going to be digging into what the campus experience, what the student experience has been like over the last 2 years. I'm very, very excited to chat with the folks that we have. Like Dart, I'm also on the UCLA Alumni Association board. It's my second term, and these types of events are some of my favorite things to get involved with here. So very much looking forward to it. And so I'll introduce our panel here. So we've got Breeze Velasquez, Justine Lim, and Letty Trevino. Can you guys come on camera? Awesome, cool. What's up, guys? How are you?
Doing good.
Doing good, nice.
Yeah, same here. Just finished classes, so that's been nice.
Awesome, awesome. How are you, Justine?
I'm doing great. Like everyone else said, first week of classes, everything's starting up, but I'm glad to be here.
Nice, nice, awesome. Well, thank you for taking the time tonight. Like Dart was saying at the top, we're really excited to just hear more about what the student experience has been like over the last 2 years. Obviously, a lot has happened, I think, last time I checked. So I think we're gonna have a really great conversation tonight. And just a reminder for folks in the audience, if you have any questions, just email Allison. She dropped her email in the chat, abeckman@support.ucla.edu. So feel free to get those over to her. So with all the formalities out of the way, why don't we just go around and talk a little bit about ourselves. We've got a great, like I said, a really great panel with a bunch of really incredible experiences from a student perspective. So let's see, Letty, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to at UCLA.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Letty. I use she, her, and ella pronouns. I'm a 6-year PhD student in the Spanish and Portuguese department here at UCLA. I actually was born in Mexico, grew up in Texas, and came here for graduate school. And in terms of like what I've been doing, so right now I'm employed by the Graduate Student Resource Center on campus, and next week is Graduate and Professional Student Appreciation Week. So a lot of what I've been doing recently has been prepping to support and just appreciate our graduate and professional students.
Awesome. So we've got a really cool, definitely going to be curious to hear from you about what the graduate student experience is like. So thank you for bringing that to the table. Let's see, Breeze, why don't you share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go to Justine.
Yeah, thank you so much. So hi everyone, my name is Breeze, pronoun she, her, hers. I am a 4th year, yay, graduation. Double majoring in Chicano and Central American Studies and Public Affairs. I currently serve as the USOC president And yeah, I'm going to be terming out in 4 weeks, which I am also very, very excited about.
Awesome. Well, congrats on you're almost there. That's got to be exciting. Definitely, hopefully we can chat a little bit about what that experience is going to look like in a couple months. But congrats on almost being done. Justine, why don't you say hello to everybody?
Hello, everybody. My name is Justine Lim, and I'm a 4th year double majoring in political science and labor studies. I'm actually going to be graduating this June, so I'm super excited. And I'm also a proud community college transfer. I was actually born in the Philippines, moved to Pennsylvania, and then moved out here to go to community college and then transfer into UCLA. So I've had quite a long journey to get here, but it's been a great journey. And on campus, I'm involved with the Philippine X Pre-Law Pipeline. I'm actually the president this year, and it's been a great experience. We work on increasing accessibility for underrepresented minority in the legal professions. And on top of that, I also work with IDEAS, which is the undocumented student organization on campus. I'm their external advocacy representative, where I work on creating connections between ideas and building a bridge to organizations across California that work towards immigrants' rights. And on top of that, I'm also a part of the Alumni Scholars Club, where I'm co-director of the Academic Enrichment Committee, where I focus on building community among transfer students in particular. And what I love about UCLA is the campus community. It's just so vibrant, and especially coming from community college, where most of the students are commuters. Being here, it's like being immersed in so many different cultures and so many amazing students with different ideas and experiences. So I'm glad to be here with Letty and Breeze tonight.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for making the time. It is so cool to hear so many stories of leadership from all of you. Really looking forward to hearing more about that kind of in this conversation. So super stoked about that, and also just the diversity of your experiences that everybody's bringing to the table here. Really curious to hear how that's all been going. So without further ado, why don't we kind of just dig into the conversation? And I'd say, I definitely, let's keep this conversational. You guys can jump in, and really want it to just be kind of a dialogue. So just want to set that as some context here. So I think the biggest thing is that us alums are curious about is, what's the experience been like over the last 2 years from your guys' perspective? As alums, it's been quite a change for us in terms of working from home and thinking about return to office. And for those of us that aren't able to be on campus or haven't been to campus the past couple of years, we're really curious to hear what it's been like from a student perspective. So yeah, would just love to hear what your experiences have been like, and how it's changed over the past 2 years as we're now back on campus. That's an open question to whoever wants to jump in first.
I can jump in first. So for graduate students, it's a little bit different because we're not just students, right? So we're also researchers, and a lot of us TA. And so I actually TA'd throughout most of the pandemic. And in my department, I'm the only, even though I'm the TA, I'm the only one that's in charge of my own class. So I would say that it was very tumultuous, and that we didn't know what was going to happen next. But I also feel like it was a moment of community building. I felt like a lot of us as instructors were kind of thinking about what are the priorities in the classroom, and what it ended up being, especially when I was talking to a lot of my peers, it was community ended up being the #1 priority for most of us, right? And so the classroom space became a little less formal, which I really enjoyed. And we got to check in with our students at the start of every class. And then on the student end of things, it felt very much like graduate school, is the only way I could describe it. Graduate school is a very isolating experience, just because you're doing a lot of your research independently. So a lot of our graduate seminars were kind of asynchronous, or they functioned the way they always have functioned. It's always just, we're all in a room, this time a Zoom room, and we're just all talking for 3 hours straight, right? So I'd say that kind of stayed the same. Zoom fatigue was very real, but I felt like it just felt very graduate school-y for the last 2 years.
Yeah, tumultuous is a very good word, I think, to use to describe the past 2 years. I'm curious to hear, either from you or from Justine Breeze, kind of like what the educational experience had kind of looked like, when we first had to kind of go fully remote. I know that's something that I think everybody thought about and had to adapt to. So curious to hear about that. But yeah, Justine, Breeze, anything you guys would like to share kind of on your personal experiences over the last couple of years?
Oh, I can hop in. So I actually transferred right as COVID was beginning in 2020. So as a transfer student, you're quite limited in the years you have at UCLA, really only 2 years. So coming into UCLA while COVID was happening, everything was just transitioning online at that point. And it was kind of difficult because I hadn't known UCLA before. So it's like adjusting to a new environment, but it's not the typical environment that UCLA usually has, because usually they have in person, right? But it's all online. And I feel like the professors may have been a little bit harder on students, because now that everything is online, they're like, oh, the students are cheating, so we must make it a little bit more difficult, but not necessarily, So not all professors did that, but I know a lot of professors tried to do that because they wanted to deter students from cheating, but because of like the online platform, they couldn't monitor the exams that would typically be held in person. So that was a bit difficult. And especially coming from semester to quarter system, that was like a big jump for a lot of transfer students. And then having it virtual too, where you couldn't really even talk to your classmates. I discovered GroupMe because I just really wanted that connection. I was so used to being at community college and like just talking to the person next to me, introducing myself, like, oh, hey, have you ever taken this class before? But with things virtual, it's like you're kind of fending for yourself. You're trying to make those connections with other people, but some people, they just don't want to be connected to, especially because it's COVID, So it was a bit difficult. So in the classroom, it was like that. It was kind of like a bit of a more difficult environment. But as COVID progressed, I feel like professors became more adjusted to the different circumstances that students had, because everybody comes from different backgrounds. You truly don't know what a student is going through, and a lot of students have hardships. So they changed their syllabus to accommodate for that. If you have issues, please talk to us, or we can refer you to someone else who can help, such as CAPS or some other resource on campus. So I really appreciated that the professors were being proactive in that sense. So that's what the classroom situation was like. But socially, I feel like, I wanted to come to UCLA because it was this bustling community of students from like all these different places. It's like this huge place of like ideas and, innovation and research. And coming in and like logging into my computer at like 9 a.m. for my first ever class at UCLA, I didn't feel that. I wanted more, I wanted to be immersed in the campus community. So, I tried to salvage as much of it as I could through class group meetings and hopping on Zoom event links and trying to get people like to talk to me through the chat function. But when you're in a room with like 20 other people, it's kind of hard to single out people and be like, oh, hey, like, what's up? Like, I think we have a class together. I recognize your face. But yeah, I've been trying to do it. But now that we've come back to campus this past fall, I have 1 year left. My friends make fun of me and say I'm a freshman, even though I'm a fourth year, because this is my first time ever at UCLA's campus. And I'm just like walking around and like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And like taking pictures, sending them to my mom. I'm like, oh, look at the Bruin bear. So it's like, I'm like basically a freshman, but I'm a fourth year. And it has been so great to actually meet with people on campus, in person, go like to regular meetings in person. So even though it started off a little rough socially, it's blossomed into something that is, I'm really excited to get to know more people. And I feel like I've taken the initiative this past, just like from fall quarter to now, to try to get as much of it as I can before I graduate, because I'll be graduating in the spring already. But yeah, that's what it's like been in the classroom, especially. So.
Yeah, I really admire your. I have a lot of empathy for the way in which you're kind of you're bringing some positivity to that. So that is really, really amazing. And talk about, like, I've heard from friends of mine that are word transfer students about the change that comes about as being a transfer student. So I can only imagine what that change is like on top of the pandemic. But it sounds like you brought such a great attitude to that, and obviously it sounds like the resources were helpful to you on campus. And were there any in particular that you found useful? And I'm just kind of curious what what you mentioned quite a few different programs there that have been around UCLA for quite a while. I'm curious if there was anything in particular that you found useful.
I think what was most useful for me, I know I mentioned CAPS because they usually put that into the syllabus, but I actually haven't been able to use CAPS yet. I've just heard from a lot of my friends who used it. But I think I found the most useful like resource is being part of like community organizations. Like I said, I was part of Ideas, which I think to me was the most helpful because they were like a second family to me that experienced a lot of the same experiences I was going through, and they gave me mutual support. So I think community like organizations on campus really do provide that mutual support that you need during these tough times.
Yeah, totally. Awesome. So there's definitely some follow-up questions that I want to get through here, but I want to hear from Breeze. What is your experience been like, and I think also from not just as a student, but also as the president of student body of USAC. What kind of stuff was going on in that world as all this was going down?
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was an adjustment. I think when COVID hit, I went back home for like that time period, and I stayed home during that time frame. And I remember like even thinking to last year, it was just such a different time. Like, I just feel like time is so weird now. Like, I think back to last year and I'm like, wow, like I was working at Target then, like life seemed so much more different. And like what, like I imagine like my life, or like the kind of the tribulations that I would go through as president, like they weren't even something I even thought about really. But I think that, returning to campus, it was definitely very, very nice. I really enjoyed fall quarter. I think just being able to like see people again and be around people was like something I really had missed. I personally do really like, I'm like one of those people that like loves to go to class. Like, even this quarter, I'm like, okay, this quarter is like, I'm ready to graduate, but I still like do enjoy like the experience of like being a student and talking to people and like seeing my friends in my classes. But I think like, on my own end, I think early on, like, I had heard of like Omicron like being an issue again. And I remember like, having that discussion with administrators within our university, and it was kind of brushed aside. And I think that, with having to be student body president also means that you need to be inclusive, and you need to listen to voices of like students that can't necessarily advocate for themselves, or like, need that representation like at the table in order to be able to like have their voices heard. So I know like the Disabled Student Union had been asking for like such a long time to like have meetings with administrators and have their voices heard. And it didn't matter if letters were sent or like what students were voicing on that end, like nothing was really getting done. So, this past quarter, what was supposed to be a one like day protest ended up becoming a sit-in. And that was very taxing to say the least. I feel like I'm still in recovery mode from that. But I think that with that, I also was able to learn so much from like so many students that I might have not been able to, and interact with students that, like on a day-to-day basis, I wouldn't like have become friends with them. But, we really went through a lot. And we made some significant strides for the university, so that was really nice. And I think that as difficult as it was, I wouldn't want it any other way.
Yeah, sounds like it. I definitely hear you about the time warp kind of thing, and you're like, what happened? All of a sudden, I've got more gray hair. I don't know where that came from. It's very frustrating. So I know what you mean. So I definitely want to talk more about the sit-in. Curious about that, but I'll come back to that in a couple questions. There was some stuff that folks wanted to get to as well. So I would say I'm curious. A lot of us alumni for the past years have been able to get back to campus for one reason or another, right? It's harder to travel, for different reasons. So I'm kind of curious, what would you guys kind of want us to know, us alums to know about like what's going on campus? Like what's, now that you're back, what's really gotten you excited? Or if you are an alum and you're coming back, what should we check out?
I think that for me, what was most surprising, I don't know about Letty or Christine, but I just was in shock. I didn't remember being around so many people. I was fortunate enough to like have my first and second year be in person, but it just was like, wow, like I was walking to class and I was like, oh my gosh, like a lot of these people are students here. Like that was really crazy to me. But it's also like really nice and like in a way, like as annoying, I don't know, y'all are alums, so y'all know like the people flyering, like as annoying as it can get sometimes, it's also like, wow, it's nice to see students back to like normal life and like knowing that like incoming Bruins will be able to have this experience, like it makes me happy.
Yeah, it's like you're talking about the people flying on Bruin Walk. That's still a thing that that hasn't gone digital yet. That's good. But yeah, so you're saying like even that you're like, yeah, this is you miss it, even though it probably wasn't your most favorite thing to have to deal with, but it feels good. Feels like home. Nice.
I think, sorry to hop in, but
Yeah.
these just reminded me because I feel like I'm really friendly on campus. So I'm walking around and sometimes when someone makes eye contact, you're just like naturally friendly, right? Now this person started having a conversation with me and I was like, oh my God, I'm making a friend. And then they pull out like a CalPERG like flyer. And I was like, I got tricked. But
no.
but yeah, they're sneaky now. They have their little clipboards behind their back and they're like, excuse me, do you have a moment of your time? But yeah, they're still on campus. So that's something to look, if you want some nostalgia, go up and down Bruin Walk. They're still selling stuff. The CalPERG is still there. They have they're like, you want to sign up for this? I'm like, I'm not looking at anybody in more headphones. Straightforward.
Yep. Oh, they gotcha. They're getting sneaky. That's funny. Well, Justine, while you got the mic, what's something that us alums should know about? What's something that's really kind of sparked joy for you on campus recently?
I think, okay, so usually when I get out of my classes around noontime, and this is only on sunny days, but I remember the first time walking out and like walking, I think I was walking towards like Royce and Jan's steps. It's so beautiful there with like the sun shining and like people have their like picnic blankets and people brought their own hammocks. I was like, did the school provide those? Because I want to get one because I want to do that. But they have like their hammocks out. People are listening to music. People are jamming out in like little groups on little picnic blankets. And it's just like all across like the slope. And I want to go ice walking on there because people told me I'm still a freshman, like I said, but I want to go ice walking. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but you just slide down like the hill. I want to try that. But yeah, around like noontime, all the students are out there just relaxing. And it's just like so picturesque and like beautiful. And just, I don't know, it sparks a joy within me.
That definitely sounds like a vibe. Wow, that sounds so nice. The ice blocking thing, that sounds fun. More power to you. I'll skip that, but the hammocks and everything else, that sounds awesome. That is so cool. That is so cool. What about you, Letty?
Yeah, I was gonna say like the grad experience is a little bit different. Like, I think it wasn't until my second year on campus that I realized that people flyer on Bruin Walk. And I was like, what is going on? Like I was really scared and uncomfortable with it. And when I've talked about that space, most graduate students are like, I don't know what you're talking about, because we stick to our departments or our labs or like the library, right? Or a lot of us work from home, even before the pandemic. So it's been very different. I think for me, one of the things I was most excited about was, so I've been working with the Graduate Student Resource Center for 4 years now. So I've been around a while, and right at the start, right before we all went remote, we got the center renovated, and it was like a years in the making process. But we didn't get to enjoy any of the renovations because we all went remote, and so coming back to the space felt both very nostalgic because it's one of the only grad only spaces on campus, but it was also very surreal because everything felt familiar, but everything looked different. And I felt like a couple of other spaces that I've been on campus like that's happened. So I I'm in North Campus, right? So I'm in Rolfe Hall. And I remember when I left, they were still building like the new business school building. And when I got back, it was up. And it was just like, wow, like the landscape of North Campus was starting to change. So I think for me, it was realizing just how much the university had changed in our absence, right? But I thought that was really cool because it kind of felt like I was starting school all over again for like the third time. So yeah, that, and also like I worked really closely with Breeze actually last year. Back then, Breeze was involved in USAC, not as president, but in a different role. And I was vice president of academic affairs for graduate students. And so we did a lot of like advocacy for graduate students. And so a lot of student affairs offices have actually like developed programming for grad students. So coming back and just having so many choices has also been like really exciting, I think, on the grad student end of things.
That's awesome. That is so cool. And I hear what you're saying about buildings going up. When last time I was on the Hill, I got lost, and that's embarrassing to say, but there's buildings and like nooks and crannies, like little parts of the Hill that I didn't even think a building could sit on. Like I think there's one between like Sproul and Reber now. Like that's a whole thing. Yeah, it's crazy when you see these like massive buildings go up in what feels like no time.
Well, and also like as a PhD student, I'm like on campus for what feels like forever, right?
Mhm.
And so like I'm on campus longer than some staff, right? So sometimes I remember things and I'm like, oh, remember that thing? And it's like, no, that hasn't existed for multiple years now, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I definitely feel for alums when they like go back and they're like, what is going on? Because
Yeah.
I've been here a while and I still don't remember how everything
Yeah.
has changed.
No, it's crazy. So I'd love to talk a little bit about how you guys have communicated through all this. I actually did want to kind of respond to something that Justine, you mentioned in your intro. It just kind of came back to me about using about feeling like you're a freshman, or kind of like building community and stuff like that. And I think a quick plug for the Alumni Association, once a Bruin, you're a Bruin for life. And so you're always going to have access to the UCLA alumni community and the UCLA community overall. So definitely just a quick shout out that like you're here. Sorry you're stuck with us, but you're gonna have a long time to take advantage of a lot of the cool things on campus. So I just thought I'd throw that out there, and Julie and the rest of the Alumni Association are working on some really amazing things to try to make that experience even bigger and better for alums. So just a quick plug there. So I'm curious, you were also talking about GroupMe and kind of how you communicated with folks over the pandemic. I'm curious, what did you guys use? Back in my day, not much existed. It was a lot of texting. We had Facebook and kind of the beginnings of Instagram. But what were you guys using? How were you staying in touch? Who had the best memes? Where were they coming from? Like what did that all look like for you guys?
I can start. So surprisingly, like Zoom became our like hanging out platform. We were tired of Zoom by the end of the day because we were in meetings all the time, but also it was a way for us to like stay connected. And I know for like grads, it's kind of completely changed the way that we interact with each other, because when you're a graduate student, at some point in your graduate career, you might not physically be in LA, right? Like you'll be doing like research in the field, or you'll go to another university to get some training in something very specific, right? And being able to still connect with your peers. So Zoom kind of has changed the game for that. So that's one of the things that we've really been using a lot. Like I still have like a weekly game night with like students that just graduated last year, right? And we're like all across the country now, but we still do like board game night just virtually. And I would say like GroupMe, the pandemic was the first time I've ever had students ask me for my number. So that's been very interesting. But yeah, Facebook is still like super popular. Instagram as well, WhatsApp, because a lot of our international student peers, like ended up going back to their home countries. So I think WhatsApp has become more popular for us more so than GroupMe. But yeah, that's kind of what we've been doing on our end.
I think for us, like for me as a transfer, all I really knew was just GroupMe and also Zoom. But a couple of the student organizations I was in were creative with like the Zoom format. There was this one, it almost looked like a video game, and I forget what the name of it was, but they like took your Zoom screen but like formed it into like a face and put you on like an avatar or something, and you walk around, and when you get close to another person, their head pops up. So it's like almost like you're interacting with other people, but on like a video game kind of format, which I thought was really cool. I just forget what the name of it was, but I was like, wow, this is really innovative, like really creative. It's like a little learning curve at the beginning, but once you get closer to and you could also play games with other people in this like virtual world, and like you're like all these little floating avatars, like, and you get closer to other people. Sometimes there'll be like a group of 3 like next to each other, and you hop on and there's like 3 of their Zoom faces pop up. So it was really cool. But yeah, you can check
It's called
that out.
Gather.
Yeah, I think it was Gather. But yeah, I was like, wow, this is really cool. They're getting really creative with the Zoom.
Wow. That sounds awesome. I'm gonna have to check that out. Sounds fun. What about you, Breeze?
Yeah, I would definitely say that GroupMe and Slack were like a big thing. And yeah, it was like, it's kind of difficult though, because like in a way, it kind of like kept you to your phone a lot of the time. Like even now, I feel like there's a million messages that like, and I'm like someone that very much does not like to like be on their phone much. Like I go to Twitter, tweet what comes to my head, and then I get off like any form of social media. But I just like found that very interesting, you know, how we became. But like Letty said, I think it was also like I became adjusted to it, like the idea of like hopping on Zoom and like, okay, like sometimes I would be tired, but like, you know, if I wanted to see my friends or like talk to people, like it just was so much more convenient. Or like, you know, watching like, I think it was like Netflix party or something. Like that was something I would do every Friday.
Yeah.
Like would do that and like watch movies together Friday night. So like, yeah, I think it was just something that like we all became acclimated to. But I think like everyone, it was like not what you would have wanted to do. It just was like we need to adjust with the time we're in.
Yeah, totally. Netflix watch parties, forgot about those. That was like in the Tiger King era of the pandemic, you know, like that was cool. Maybe if people are still using it, that's also very cool. But that's when I remember hearing about a lot of those. So that's cool. All right, so we've got our first question from the audience here. Remember, folks in the audience, you can email Allison Beckman for anything that you want us to ask these amazing students about. So the first one's about campus climate, right? So a lot has happened in terms of social and political issues around diversity and inclusion and over the last 2 years. And so would be curious to hear, again, you know, not that you guys are speaking for any particular organizations on campus or anything like that, but more just from your perspective, you know, what has the climate been like on campus, or particularly around diversity and issues related to politics?
So, Breeze is like laughing in the corner. I feel like it's been intense. I that's how I would describe it, is like super intense and fast paced. Like I came from like an undergrad in Texas, right? And so the student body experience there was very different. And so a lot of students would say that once they go to like undergrad, they become more politically active, more politically aware, right? And I certainly did, and my peers did too back in Texas. But then coming to LA, coming to UCLA specifically, it's a completely different culture. Like even this was even before the pandemic. Like you had to be on top of your things, right? Like your peers would call you out, your students would call you out. You kind of needed to educate yourself, which I thought was a great, you know, because I think the world is a much better place when we're all like trying to be considerate of every human being that exists. So I feel like during the pandemic, everything was just much more intense because it felt like greater things were at stake. Like every policy decision, every call that was made from up top, whether that was from like student government working with administrators, or from like UCOP, or even like from the like Department of Education, like we knew would affect our lives in so many different ways. And it felt like the stakes were greater because like people were dying, right? And for some of the populations that like were a part of, people have been dying for a long time. And this was the first time that we were actually openly talking about it in a very serious way. So I felt like for people who are part of those populations that, you know, are being like brutally attacked by police officers, or where children are being put in concentration camps on the US-Mexico border, or are undocumented and just trying to like have access to some of the other support systems that exist for people who have documentation. I think everything just coalesced at the same time and came to light at the same time. So I think my personal experience has been that it's been very intense, and it's also just been like these last few years have been moments of like education and re-education for me personally, and also for a lot of my peers.
Yeah, I think definitely what Letty said, it has been very, very intense. I think like, you know, I served with Letty last year as academic affairs commissioner, and I think it was just very difficult because it just seemed like nothing could go right. Like I always felt like, okay, I've addressed one issue, literally 12 hours later, some other decision would be coming out, and I would be like, well, got to deal with this too. And like all the while, you know, like I was living at home, or like I have like a lot of family members that live with me, as well as like I have like, you know, I was working a lot of hours, and like I had to like manage all of that, and at the same time make sure that like I was, you know, appropriately reaching out to people that needed to be reached out to, while also trying to find the space to take care of myself. And that just proved to be a challenge in of itself. And I think, you know, further coming into this year, everything that happened, especially this last quarter, was like very difficult. And I think like the way Letty said, like just kind of always challenging yourself to like educate and re-educate yourself, was definitely something I had to like learn to adapt to. And like learning when like I'm wrong, and being able to be okay with when I am wrong. Because I feel like I'm a Gemini, so like I always like to be right, but sometimes you can be wrong, and that is something I've had to learn. I think also like for me, definitely I feel very tired. So I'm very happy in like the fact that, you know, I eventually do want to return back to advocacy in a couple of years, but you know, I'm going to be like a kindergarten teacher for a couple of years following graduation. So that is something I'm very much looking forward to, because I really care about like youth and like education. So I'm really excited to be able to do that. And like eventually I do want to come back into ed policy work, but as of now, I am very excited to for once be able to breathe a little away from like campus politics, I feel like.
I'll jump in. So much of my advocacy work has been towards helping and assisting undocumented students on campus. So I think I realized my first quarter on campus that there was that shift in priorities from more of like an academic to more of like humanities perspective, because a lot of the professors began to shift their, you know, syllabus language to like, you know, like no excuses, you have to turn this in, this, and then to more like accommodating, like if you have issues, please talk to me. So I think that was a big shift that I noticed when I first came to UCLA. But I think for my advocacy work with assisting undocumented and helping undocumented communities, it was really difficult to hear my peers share their personal struggles, because everybody is going through something and they have their own hardships. But especially for undocumented communities who are overrepresented in these essential industries and largely left out of COVID relief efforts. So hearing them talk about how their parents weren't able to make enough money and they had to, you know, take a quarter off to help their family and get another job. it's really difficult, and you want to increase, the funding that is available to them. And gladly UCLA does like emergency grants, like the HERF grants that went out to help and alleviate some of those issues. But more work definitely needs to be done to, account and like help communities who have been affected by COVID, and to help them, increase access to like universities and, continue their education despite those hardships. But
it's cool to hear all of you share about what the climate has been like, and then also what you guys are doing as a result of it. That wasn't what I was hoping to get at in this question, but it's cool to hear, and I think that's really inspiring to folks. So thank you for sharing that extra part of your story and the impact that you guys are driving on campus. That's really amazing. So another question, we got two questions that came in from the audience, two more. One, this idea of mentorship is incredibly important to UCLA alumni. We have all these amazing programs that allow students to network both with each other and also with alums, alumni mentor programs, et cetera. And so the question is, have any of you had stories, or can you share a little bit about advisors or mentors that you've been able to develop during your time at UCLA?
Yeah, I mean, like I can speak to that. One of my other jobs on campus currently is actually working on mentorship initiatives in STEM in South Campus. So it's kind of been my bread and butter for the last 6 months. But personally for me, I think I've found so many mentors in the university staff. I think of this one staff person in particular. Unfortunately, she's no longer at UCLA, but she's doing great work. And she's the reason I didn't drop out of my program. There was a time in which I was struggling with whether or not I should go back home to help my family out financially, and whether or not graduate school was a selfish endeavor. And she was just so wonderful. And I think she was wonderful because she let me connect to others in other graduate students. And also she really supported all of my advocacy work. And she also gave me options, showed me different ways that I could engage professionally and academically that don't necessarily have to do with my program, and kind of open my eyes to other career opportunities. Because when you go into a PhD program, you think you're going to be a professor usually. And so being able to explore something else and not feel tied down to just one career path is huge, because you don't feel stuck. That, and also just knowing that there were so many people, there's so many staff members specifically on campus that are checking in with me, and they're like, how are you doing, Letty? Are you going to finish your PhD? What do you need to do to get to the next step? Oh, I might be able to connect you with a faculty member that I know, right? They were also invested in me. So it felt like I had built another community of people that were rooting for me. So yeah, I feel like there's so many mentors. I can't possibly name even a fraction of them. But yeah.
But that's incredibly meaningful. I mean, that's a good problem to have, I think. Yeah. So that's awesome to hear. Justine or Breeze, curious to hear your mentorship kind of experiences.
I think similar to Letty, I found a lot of my mentors within my professors too, specifically with the labor studies department. The professors there are absolutely amazing. Some of them are just in for as lecturers, so they're not permanent faculty, but I found amazing mentors. I had one of my professors, her name was Betty Hung. She is deep within the social justice initiative. She actually worked in a bunch of campaigns that help produce a lot of the legislation that supports undocumented immigrants in California today. So I think just reaching out to those people and having them support you, she would send me, because she knew I wanted to go to law school and I had aspirations, and she's also an attorney. So she would send me all these opportunities and events through email, even after our class ended, to help me achieve my goals. And on top of that, I also met another professor. His name is Kent Wong. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with him, but he was familiar with my work with ideas for the undocumented organization. He actually recruited me to be his TA for his California Immigrant Youth class this past quarter that's continuing on to this quarter. And he's been such a great mentor to me, opening all these opportunities and doors for me. And I'm actually going to be working with him again this summer for an organization he founded actually 30 years ago, the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. So I'll be working with them this summer, forming like a national cohort of students to help with anti-Asian violence. So yeah, those have been my amazing mentors at UCLA. And just reaching out to them and having them be so open to me and sharing their experiences and knowledge has been absolutely amazing. And just even connecting on like a personal level, like joking around, like talking about what you guys did this week. It's actually in Egypt this time, and I was like, send me a picture of a camel because it's really cool. But creating those connections, I think, is really important. You know, not just even on an academic level, but just on a personal level, it's really important too.
You know, it's so huge to hear about all the stuff you guys are doing. It's so impressive. You know, even though the questions about mentorship, you are all kind of going to be amazing mentors to folks sometime in the future. So that's really so inspiring to hear. Breeze, what about your mentorship experiences?
Yeah, I definitely do resonate with both Letty and Justine and finding a lot of my mentors. Feel like I didn't necessarily find as many in the classroom as I did outside, just because my classroom experience, like I always feel like I've been the student that's like, I don't know, it was wrong of me, but it's just because I've been so invested in everything else that I feel like my relationships with my professors have always been like very much like, I'm going to get my work done, turn in my work, we finish the class, we move on. But I feel like my relationships with like even outside, so one particular mentor that I had was when I established, he's part of the Latino Alumni Association within like UCLA, and like he had even heard, but he stuck with me through everything, like anything I need. He's a coordinator, like an education coordinator at MALDEF, which is the Mexican American Legal Defense and Education Fund. And literally through everything, like he found out that I was doing like the sit-in, and he like texted me, he's like, are you okay? Do you need anything? Like literally through everything. And like, you know, his wife, right, she's an immigration attorney, and like I had mentioned wanting to do that, and like he'll always just be updating me. Like we're like very close, and that's like just like a mentorship I appreciated, because you know I interned with them way back when I was a little freshman, and just to have like that relationship where it's like, oh, like he's almost like an older brother, like that's like we're like, you know, very close. So I really appreciate that, especially like in seeing like other, you know, folks of color that like are able to like reach out and like really mentor you and support you when you don't have like that establishment from like family members beforehand. It's like very beneficial. And I also feel like one of the deans at UCLA in particular, Dean Jasmine Rush, she's just been such a sweetheart to work with, and like is so caring for students. And like when I see like someone working in education policy and like how she's like worked a lot within like administration to like change a lot of efforts, I really kind of look up to her in that way. And she's also been someone that's there to support me outside of the role as like president or when I was AAC as well. So I just really admire and respect her as well. So yeah, those are two of my favorite mentors, I guess.
That's awesome. That is so cool to hear. And a quick plug to alums that are on the call or listening or watching later on social media. You know, there's millions of ways you can get involved as a mentor. You know, simple ways: attending networking nights, also the alumni mentorship program, or even just joining UCLA One. Great product. You know, if you can Google it or find it through the alumni website. It's a really easy way for you to just open the doors to mentoring students, as much or as little as you want. Definitely something I would recommend. I have mentors when I was a student that I still keep in touch with today. So through those programs. So it's incredibly meaningful. All right, so we've got about 5 minutes left here. Dart's going to come back on in about 4 minutes to close us out. So why don't we wrap up? This was another question from the audience. This sounds like something that might have come from like my mom or dad or somebody, but 5-year plans. What do you guys got? Okay, let's go. I need flow charts. We need it all. No, if you don't want to answer the 5-year plan, we can go with like, because I don't know what my 5-year plan would be, but what are your plans post graduation? If you one of those two, I'll leave it up to you guys.
Yeah, so I'm going to be going to higher ed admin. So a lot of the staff that turned into mentors have started turning into like recruiters. So I get pinged every few months asking like when I'm graduating, because they have some openings in their office. So honestly, I've fallen in love with UCLA. And I broke it to my family recently that I'm not going to be going back to Texas. So I'm hoping, and if everything goes well, I'll be hired at UCLA within the next year, and just like staying with the Bruin community for goodness, who knows how long, hopefully many more decades to come. So that's my 5, 10, 20-year plan.
I love that. Not a bad place to be.
Yeah.
I could go next. So like Letty, I also love UCLA. I want to go here for law school. This summer, I'll be working with Kent on the Dream Summer project with the Asian Pacific American Labor Alliance. But in the fall, I'll be applying to law schools. So I'll be taking like a little gap here, and hopefully I get into UCLA law. I just love UCLA and the campus community here. I can't get enough of it. Maybe it's just because I only had like a year here, but I just want to be back here. It's just so beautiful, and I love the community and the work that a lot of the students do. So I want to come back here. But in my gap year, I think I'm going to be doing a lot of labor-related cases and like issues, because I want to go into labor and employment law, specifically helping undocumented workers in the wage industries. I recently did an internship with the California Labor Commissioner's Office, which is the state agency that enforces a lot of labor laws that go into place and prosecute a lot of like businesses who are, I guess, like violating those rights. And I'm hoping to work with them again during my gap year to get more involved in the nitty gritty of employment and labor law. And then when I go into law school, I hope to get, more experience through there, and then someday become a labor and employment attorney.
Amazing. Amazing. Breeze, how about yourself?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, I am very excited because I'm going to be able to teach children for like a couple of years. I don't know how long I'll be doing that. I do eventually want to come back to law school, but I do think that right now I'm very much, at least for 2 or 3 years, looking forward to being able to teach children, because that's something I had wanted to do before, I came to UCLA. So being able to do that for a while is something I'm very much looking forward to. And who knows, maybe I'll stick it out and maybe go get my master's in education instead. We'll see.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, we've appreciated the time that you've all taken tonight in sharing your stories and your perspectives. And for us alum, this is really meaningful because we don't get to talk to students every day. And it's great to hear what's going on campus and how things have been over, such a wild past couple of years. So thank you to all 3 of you for taking the time. And Dart here is going to close us out and I think give us a heads up on the next town hall that we've got coming up.
That's right. Letty, Breeze, Justine, I just want to thank you so much for joining us today at this incredible UCLA Alumni Association Town Hall. And thank you, Matt, one of our August board members who is really helping. By the way, folk, he's helping to lead our UCLA Alumni Association strategic planning process. So if you would like to learn more, I'm putting him on blast here. You can reach out to Matt Saucedo, obviously through Christine or some of the folk in our, and Allison through some of the folk in our Alumni Association. But we would love to get your feedback as we continue to explore how we can strengthen the Alumni Association and best meet your needs. Students, I want to thank you again for your leadership. I want to thank you for all that you've done. Breeze, talking about the sit-in. Letty, your work and your PhD, Justine, amazing. You should connect it to some of our board members who also do labor law as well. So I just want to, again, thank you all so much for joining. Folk, I want you to have a wonderful evening. We'll look forward to seeing you here at our next UCLA Alumni Association Town Hall. We'll keep you posted. We'll send those details. Be sure to look out in your Alumni Connect newsletter. And with that being said, Have a good evening and go Bruins.